Welcome to the Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Anna Huntsman, in today for Stephanie Haney. Thanks for joining us. Stress is part of everyday life. For many of us, it stems from work, family, relationships, or simply trying to keep up with the demands of a busy world. In a study released last year by the American Psychological Association, 76% of adults said the future of the nation was a significant source of stress. The economy was close behind at 75%. While some stress can help us stay focused and respond to challenges, chronic stress can take a serious toll on both our brains and our bodies. Today, we'll start the hour by exploring the different types of stress, how they can affect our long-term health, and the warning signs that it might be time to seek help. Later in the program, we'll hear from IdeaStream's summer interns as they're wrapping up their last week with us. But first, joining me today in studio to talk stress is Dr. Adam Borland, a clinical psychologist at the Cleveland Clinic. Hi, Dr. Borland.
Hi.
Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hopefully it wasn't too stressful getting here.
Not stressful at
I don't
all.
know how many times, fair warning, I may make that pun again in this conversation, but anyway. We also have Dr. Jasmeet Hayes, Associate Professor of Clinical Psychology and Cognitive Neuroscience at The Ohio State University, joining us by phone. Hi, Dr. Hayes. And if you would like to join the conversation, I think we're maybe haven't gotten Dr. Hayes yet, but we'll check back in there. But if you would like to join the conversation, you can give us a call at 866-578-0903 or send us an email, soi@ideastream.org, or you can message us on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Okay, Dr. Adam Borland, let's start with you. So my first simple question is, stress is something we have all dealt with, but from your perspective, what is it? What is the definition of stress?
Stress is that constant feeling of being overwhelmed, feeling as though there's no off switch. And it's something that we respond to emotionally and physically. And it's certainly something that I'm seeing within my clinical practice on a daily basis.
Okay, so can you talk about, are there different types of stress, and what are they?
Sure. So when we look at the emotional stress that people are dealing with, we often get the sense that we can't turn off, that there's information overload, that there's just something constantly going on in our brains that results in racing thoughts, chronic worry, and our bodies respond to that. We experience what's called the fight or flight experience. And that's where it's important to remember that we have coping tools to navigate these stressors.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do want to bring Dr. Hayes into the conversation. She's on Zoom and I think was maybe muted. But Dr. Hayes, talk about from your perspective. Do you have the same kind of definition? What is stress to you?
Yeah, well, thank you. Actually, thank you for having me. I think I was so stressed that I didn't take off my mute button.
It happens.
So happy to be here. So I agreeing with Dr. Borland. Fundamentally, stress is our body's physical and emotional response to a challenging circumstance. And so, it is important to note that it can be very adaptive. We have stressors that come up in our lives all the time, and our body needs to mobilize the energy, the ability to deal with the stressors. So how adaptive or harmful it is really depends on multiple things, including the intensity of the stressor, the duration of the stressor, but it also depends on our response to the stressor and whether or not we feel that we have the resources to deal with it.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about how stress can actually be beneficial sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say, we are in the car and the car in front of us suddenly stops. Our body sees that as a challenge. We need to put our foot on the brake immediately in order to stop crashing into the car in front of us. So our body recognizes the challenge, it mobilizes adrenaline, cortisol, and that increases our heart rate and it gets us to put our foot on that on the brake pedal and stop us from crashing. So if we didn't have that adaptive response, our body wouldn't be able to deal with such a stressor.
Dr. Borland, what are some of the most common stressors? What do you hear from people or just through research? What are the most common things? And then kind of the second part of that question, why do some people respond to those stressors differently?
In my clinical practice, I think you had alluded to it earlier. Financial stress is certainly something that people are mentioning. Just the general world that we're living in today, information overload, feeling as though they're just the 24/7 news cycle, feeling as though there isn't an opportunity to take a step away and engage in other activities that are calming, that are emotionally fulfilling. And that's why coming to therapy can be extremely beneficial.
And, why is it that one person might experience something, that's a stressful situation, it's a stressor, and then somebody else might experience it as well, and they kind of have different responses. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure, we're all wired differently.
Yeah.
Recognizing that we have different coping tools. Maybe we learned in our home that these are ways to deal with stress from a healthy manner, and maybe there were ways that weren't so healthy. Maybe there was substance abuse in the home, maybe there was yelling, and this is the way that stress is dealt with. So it really becomes an adaptive dynamic, and recognizing that we have the ability to make these choices in our lives as to how we deal with stress.
Such a good point about it not just being about who the person is. Yes, we are all different people, but we all come from different backgrounds, different home lives and things like that. And that can totally, I can imagine, predict how we're going to respond to certain situations. 866-578-0903 is the number to call if you'd like to get in the conversation. What's stressing you out? Or, how do you respond to stress? What questions might you have for our panelists here? Give us a call or send us an email at soi@ideastream.org. Dr. Hayes, I want to go back to you. Can you talk about what's really going on in the brain when we experience stress? And, are there different, terms for the different types of stress?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to think about the stressors, and we've talked about this already a little bit, acute stress versus chronic stress. And so that acute stress response, what's going on in the brain is we see the challenge, we see the stressor, and like I mentioned, our brain perceives that stress and executes a pathway that releases adrenaline, cortisol, the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis releases cortisol and helps to mobilize the response. That can last for seconds, minutes, enough time for us to respond to the stressor. Now, with acute stress, what is supposed to happen is our body returns to baseline. So we no longer have that acute stress response. However, what we see with chronic stress is that those systems are constantly activated, and we don't go back to baseline, or if we do, we don't return to a baseline for a long enough time to recover. And so that ends up what researchers call allostatic load, which is the cumulative wear and tear associated with these pathways, ongoing pathways, not returning to baseline, not giving us a chance to recover. So that has an impact on not just the brain, but multiple bodily systems, including our immune system, cardiovascular health. It influences our sleep and also our metabolic systems. What we see in the brain is that this constant increase in cortisol and hormonal increases leads to what we call glucocorticoids, which can be very toxic to a particularly important part of our brain called the hippocampus, which is very important for encoding and retrieving memories. So with chronic stress over time, with the repeated activation of these systems, the glucocorticoids can act as toxins and actually decrease the number and sizing of the neurons that we have in the hippocampus.
Wow. I feel like I'm back in my AP psychology class in high school, learning the different parts of the brain and how they all work. And gotta admit, that's stressing me out a little bit to be thinking back about my time in high school, because I really feel like that was the most stressful time, I don't know, in my life. But anyway, I did want to talk about and you kind of mentioned it, Dr. Hayes, but there's physical, there's emotional, behavioral signs. Dr. Borland, can you talk about how sometimes it manifests differently depending on the situation, and what are those different, the different signs, I guess?
As previously recognized, the idea of losing sleep. We know how important that is from an emotional and physical functioning standpoint. That is certainly something that patients are dealing with in my clinical practice, which is resulting in this chronic fatigue, feeling as though they're not as sharp as they usually are, poor concentration, memory difficulties, increased caffeine usage in order to balance out that fatigue, which then can increase stress and anxiety levels. That's where it's important to create and establish a healthy daily routine that includes a healthy sleep pattern, healthy sleep hygiene patterns.
Yeah, that was one that really stuck out to me, was the sleep. I feel like when I'm experiencing something or I'm stressed out about something, it's like I'm just constantly waking up all night. And so you're seeing that quite a bit with people then, is sleep is one of the big ones. What's another, how else does it affect kind of the daily life?
People are very hard on themselves. Opening up and recognizing I need to be kinder to myself. Stress is often exacerbated by social media. It is something that is constant. It's very easy for us to negatively compare ourselves. Why does this other person have these things that I don't? And we overlook the good things in our lives.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I certainly establish in my practice, is the importance of gratitude. What lens are we looking through? Through one of abundance or deficit?
Well, definitely. I want to start talking about tools here soon and techniques to deal with stress. But before we do that, we have a couple of callers that I want to get to. Let's first talk to Mark in Akron, who has a question. Hi, Mark. Welcome to the Sound of Ideas. What's your question?
Yes, good morning. I was listening to your panel, and I'm suffering from a lot of those symptoms. Let me give you a little background. I recently lost my mom, and I was taking care of her. I was her sole care provider for the last 3 years.
Wow.
And I have a lot of those issues. I participate in yoga and meditation, which I highly recommend to the masses out there, whoever's listening. But I still have problems with sleep deprivation and cortisol. I can't lose weight. I walk a lot. I try everything. And I would love to hear what your panel have to say about that. Thank you for taking my call.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for calling and for sharing that. So sorry to hear about your mom and what you've been experiencing. I'm sure, Dr. Borland, this is something you were nodding along as he was talking, because obviously grief, huge stressor. What are your thoughts on his question, and do you have any tips?
In my practice, I see a lot of caregivers,
Yeah.
both professional and then also personal. For caregivers, it's often difficult for them to prioritize their own well-being. It comes from such a good place, right? Wanting to take care of a loved one. However, our needs then become lower on the priority list. Sleep, healthy eating habits, exercise, just attending to those daily tools that are so important to living a healthy lifestyle. I think it's important to recognize there are coping tools, there are support systems out there, that you're not alone, that our caller was not alone, and that it takes a lot of courage. It takes courage to have called in today to recognize that. And it takes courage to seek help, to say, you know what, I'm having a hard time and I need to talk to someone. Mental health services are available.
Yeah, definitely. Those kind of services and finding community, maybe people who can relate. I'm sure those are all great tips as well. I want to hear now, we're going to join, we're going to bring into the conversation Dr. Mariana Klatt, Director of the Center for Integrative Health at The Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center. Hi, Dr. Klatt. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I don't know if you had heard that caller, if you have any thoughts on that aspect of, what are some things that folks can do if they're in that situation, dealing with a big stressor, and don't really know where to turn? What are some of your tips?
Well, so the two other experts that you have on the line here are great because they talked about the physiology of what happens. My expertise is providing actual little tools for people that preventative and 2 to 4 minute tools that they can use during the day. So my focus is pragmatic things that people can do. So I put together a program that is yoga and mindfulness and relaxing music. And we have a mobile app so that people can access during the day little teeny practices when they feel that stress response coming up in their bodies. And the focus is on exactly what Dr. Borland and Hayes said: sleep, eating, exercise, self-care. All those things are the most important things.
So in these exercises, are they breathing techniques? What are some of the exercises, the small things that people can do throughout the day?
Sure. So we've had about 3,000 people go through the 8-week program that's 30 minutes a week. And it's breathing, movement, little teeny things that people can do during the day to change the lens that Dr. Borland talked about. It's how you need to shift the lens, but how do you do it? And so the breathing, people really love that. So those exercises are very effective. Another thing that people get, we have like little inspirational things on the mobile app that are that help people remember why they're doing what they're doing, like the caller that called in and how stressful it is to be a caregiver, to find the meaning in that, to remember how important your job is and why you need to take care of yourself so that you can take care of your ailing parent.
Yeah, how do you help folks learn to prioritize these exercises and their own kind of mental health? I guess what I'm trying to get at is sometimes I think I know I've been like this. I've heard friends and family say this. If we're going through something stressful, I want to get it done. I want to take care of things. I want to overcome this. I don't have time to do yoga but of course, these are the things that we need to be prioritizing. So Dr. Klatt, do you hear that feedback ever? And how do you help people actually build this into the routine?
That's why we provide small chunks.
Yeah.
So our program is called Mindfulness in Motion. How do you get it into the motion of your actual day, no matter what it is that's causing your stress, whether it be a chronic illness, whether it be caregiving, whether it be working as a healthcare professional. During COVID, that was just such a wake-up call for how much stress healthcare professionals are under. And so that's what really pushed our program forward. We had to provide something that the healthcare professional could do on the go in between treating different patients. And so my expertise absolutely is not therapy. It is providing small chunks of practical tools during the day.
Yeah. I want to take another caller now. We have Todd calling in from Ward 1. Hi, Todd. Welcome to the Sound of Ideas. What's your comment or question?
Hi, Anna, Jasmine, Muriel, Ellen, and Adam. So here's my question, and then I have a comment. My question is, can the human body and mind fully develop without stress? I believe that there's such a thing as healthy stress, and it can come from outside sources and come from internal source, being yourself. But can the human body and mind fully develop without stress? And then I have this question. Could you define frustrate for people and explain to people what frustration is as it applies to stress?
Sure. Well, so we'll start with the first part of that question. Dr. Hayes, I want to bring you back into the conversation. What are your thoughts on what Todd was asking? How can your brain fully develop without stress, or can the mind and body have healthy growth without it?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Todd. It's a great question. So I think you're onto it. No, we cannot fully develop without having stress. Um, our brain is built to learn, and we need to learn what might be challenging in our environment. We need to learn what things to avoid. And the way that we're going to learn that is being confronted by challenges. Um, Not only to stay alive, that's a major part of what stress does. It helps us to recognize what might be harmful in our environment and we need to avoid, but also how to grow as an individual. We need to have those challenges, and you may have seen in the media, you may have read studies showing that having these challenges in our life is important. We don't want to be snowplow parents for our kids. We want these little challenges in our life so we can grow from that. And our brain develops with that knowledge, and we learn what the best way forward is for ourselves and for our bodies with that stress. So stress is an absolutely fundamental, important part of our lives.
Yeah, thank you for answering that question. Dr. Borland, Todd was also asking about frustration and defining frustration. And it made me think, how do you separate a frustration from a stressor?
Yeah, so when I think of a frustration, there is a goal that you're trying to achieve, and there is some sort of obstacle that's preventing you from getting to that goal. And that's where, again, utilizing your coping tools, recognizing I have a choice as to how I approach this. Frustration doesn't have to always equate to anger or kind of spinning out of control. It's the importance of recognizing, okay, I see what's going on here. All right. It's not something that's enjoyable, but I recognize this obstacle, and now I need to activate the coping tools that I have. And I think the more that we do that, it also creates a sense of resiliency. This was something that was challenging, and I figured out a way to overcome it.
Right. During this conversation so far, we've talked a lot about daily stress and the stressors and even some tools on how to navigate that and reduce it, on a day-to-day basis. But I want to learn more about the effects on the body and brain over time. So Dr. Hayes, can you talk about your work at the Mindset Lab and how you study chronic stress on brain structure and function over time?
Yeah, absolutely. So two of the main outcomes that we're studying in the lab is brain structure and function using MRI. And the second outcome is cognition. So ultimately, we want to understand how stress influences brain structure and function. But that alone in and of itself may not actually translate to real life. So what does it mean to have maybe a smaller part of your brain that, does it actually have some sort of outcome? And that's why we try to tie it to cognition. So if you have a change in the brain, does it actually mean something for you in real life? Does it mean changes in your memory? Does it mean changes in your concentration ability? And so what we do with MRI is we look at people who who have chronic levels of stress, and some of those individuals have had traumatic experiences or stressful experiences that have involved threatened death, bodily harm, injury, and then we study the impacts on the brain. And what we have found is that indeed there are some areas like the hippocampus in particular is impacted by that stress. So we see smaller volume in the hippocampus, and we also see changes in function. It doesn't function as well when you have these chronic levels of stress. And
Go
so,
ahead, sorry.
yes, go ahead.
No, keep going. I thought you were wrapping up your answer there. Keep going.
Yeah, and so tying that to cognition, we have found that, in relation to these smaller volumes, we also see that it has an influence on memory. People have poorer memory. But on the flip side, we have also done studies looking at emotion regulation. So if you now instruct people to regulate their emotion to stressors, we actually see the opposite, that you can have better brain structure and better brain function, including better memory, if you think about these stressors in a different way. And that's a strategy, an emotion regulation strategy that we call cognitive reappraisal.
Tell me a little bit more about that. What is, how can we be thinking of things differently that will kind of help us out in the long run?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say you're in a work situation and you have a big presentation coming up or a big job that you're trying to complete. And your cognitions to yourself is, I'm going to mess this up. I'm a failure. Everyone's going to laugh at me. I always do things poorly. A different way to think about that is, I'm having a response to this upcoming task, and I feel like it's a very important task for me. I may have made mistakes in the past, but I can learn from those mistakes and I can correct them to some extent. So if you change the script and think about the challenge in a different way, you acknowledge the challenge, but then you also acknowledge that you have tools to address this challenge. There are, that kind of reappraisal seems to really help with our brain function.
So it sounds like there's so many tools that you can do to work on the stressors in your life. Dr. Klatt, what would you say is the biggest lifestyle change or most important lifestyle change someone can make to reduce stress and anxiety in their daily life?
It kind of relates to what Dr. Hayes said. The best thing that I have ever heard is that we're only stressed out about things that are important to us. And so instead of trying to avoid the stress, try to transform that stress. Realize why, like for a healthcare worker, why are they stressed out when they can't provide the care to their patients in a timely manner? It's because they care about patient care. And so if you start to look at your stress as something, oh, well, I'm only stressed out about this because this is important to me. That helps you transform it and to do some things like to prepare for a talk an upcoming talk you're nervous about, and it changes it. So to me, it's the mindset change.
Dr. Borland, as you work with patients, do you ever see them have a light bulb moment? Is there a certain tip or advice that you give sometimes that really connects with people?
From a clinical standpoint, a light bulb moment is so gratifying, both for the patient and the clinician. I think it's important to recognize that the tools are available. I think sometimes we get so bogged down with the specifics, all right, and the details that are just constant, that we often overlook the strengths that we have. I think, again, as I mentioned before, resiliency, recognizing that we can overcome challenging situations, but it's going to take time and patience.
Obviously, this is we broadcast to 22 counties. So if I was going to ask you, where should someone seek help or where can they find the resources? Obviously, I'm sure there are a lot out there, but where can people even just begin if they don't know where to start?
Sure. So at the Cleveland Clinic, we have a very user-friendly website where people can look up different specialties. We have plenty of behavioral health therapists. If someone doesn't want to seek that website, you can contact the phone number on the back of your insurance card to see what providers are within network. That's always a great start. The American Psychological Association has a search engine to find therapists that meet your needs. So there's plenty of treatment available, but it takes courage to take that first step.
Definitely. And we have just about 30 seconds here, but I did want to go back to Dr. Klatt one last time here. What would you say if someone's looking for a place to begin as far as where can I, learn more about mindfulness? Where can I learn more about breathing? I know you mentioned there's an app out there. What else do you tell people?
It's free. You can get the app for free, just mindfulness in motion at osu.edu. and they could sign up and download it, and it's free. But the breathing is the one thing that everybody can do.
Yeah.
To do some patterned breathing that really slows down the stress response.
Well, unfortunately, we do have to wrap it there. I'm sure we could talk about this for a long time. There's so many aspects to this, but thank you so much to all of our guests. Dr. Adam Borland, clinical psychologist at the Cleveland Clinic. Thanks for being here today.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Dr. Jasmeet Hayes, associate professor of clinical psychology and cognitive neuroscience at The Ohio State University. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And Dr. Mariana Klatt, director of the Center for Integrative Health at The Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Time now for a quick break, but when we return, we'll hear from IdeaStream's 2026 summer interns. As a new school year quickly approaches, they'll reflect on their experiences and discuss the lessons they'll apply in their future careers. This is The Sound of Ideas. I'm Anna Huntsman, in today for Stephanie Haney. We'll be right back. You're with The Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Anna Huntsman, in today for Stephanie Haney. Thanks so much for staying with us. As the summer winds down, many internships for college students are also coming to a close. This summer, IdeaStream Public Media welcomed 8 college students and 1 high school student from University School into our studios at the Idea Center to hone their crafts and gain experience throughout multiple departments, from the news to marketing to classical music. Today, we'll spend some time with a few of those interns, hearing what they've worked on this summer, how it may have influenced their career ambitions, and what they'll take away in general from their time at IdeaStream. And because we had 9 interns, we split them up into 2 panels. So today we'll hear from 4 and the other 5 next week on the show. This conversation was pre-taped, so we can't take your calls right now, but we welcome your questions and thoughts. You can email us at soi@ideastream.org or message us on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Here's Stephanie Haney.
Joining me in studio today from our summer 2026 class of interns here at IdeaStream Public Media, we have Alex Braun, content production intern and rising senior at Cleveland State University. Hi, Alex.
How's it going?
Good to have you here. We also have with us Charlotte Johns, news intern and rising junior at Ball State University in Indiana. Hi, Charlotte.
Hi, happy to be here.
Thanks for being here. We also have Jillian Osredkar, marketing intern and rising senior at Cleveland State University. Welcome, Jillian.
Hi, thank you.
And Lucas Yang, arts and culture intern and recent graduate from Case Western Reserve University. Lucas, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Now, Jillian, you're working with the marketing team here at IdeaStream. Tell us about what that's been entailing for you.
It's a lot of production on more of behind the scenes things that I've been working on. A lot that's not out yet. But a lot of the things that I've been working on that I can show are I've been doing volunteer t-shirts for events that go from now till as long as they want to use that design. I've also been working on a lot of things that are for social media. So for example, I've done like banner headers for our X and Facebook pages for our different stations. I've also been working on a few different things for like email. I've done email headers for IdeaStream in the community. And yeah, just some promos, fundraising, just things I can't share just yet.
Sure. Now, you came in with experience as a graphic designer. You just shared some examples with us of using those skills in this role. So you came in with a good set of skills here. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've learned?
I've actually learned a lot, mostly just different ways of producing for, more corporate. My style's been more, I guess the best way to explain it would be more artsy. So I've definitely had to learn how to take a more corporate side to things that'd be more appropriate for, news or public media in general.
When you say artsy, are you talking about individual artist work, personal branding? What exactly do you mean by artsy?
Honestly, a mixture of all of it. I've done a lot of things for myself. I've done, for example, for school, we had to do something regarding, like movies that we like. So I made something for one of my favorite movies. I've also done, book covers, album covers, stuff like that.
Okay, so definitely a different genre here. Thanks for sharing that with us, Jillian. Now, Alex, you're a film major at Cleveland State University. Tell us what your day-to-day role has been like here as a production intern and how you've been able to use those film production skills.
Yeah, so every morning I come in and I work on this very show. I do these graphics from the control room, then I come in and I help man the cameras. I've learned a lot about just how, like, a lot about multi-camera shooting and lighting. I think that's something that it doesn't get very taught much in film school because it's a TV thing, and I think seeing it firsthand is very nice. I worked on lighting performance with Applause a few weeks back, and I got to go up in the rafters and put gels on lights. And I was like, I've never done this before. This is very interesting. I've never been that high up before. I was worried, man, I hope I don't have like a fear of heights that I'm like just now discovering.
Sure.
But yeah, it's very interesting. I've learned a lot about just how things are made in this kind of like stage setting.
A production setting will put you in a lot of different situations. I was just looking around counting the cameras that we have in here, and I see 6. So when you talk about a multi-camera setup, and also you joined us in the field. You were with us for one of our community tours. Tell us about that.
Hey, it was really nice. We got to go to the zoo. Setting it up was fun. It's very interesting lighting for the outside like that. That's another thing that I really don't do much. Lighting for outside, lighting for multicam outside, and then seeing just like the station of all of the broadcast cameras that was there, and like the control room and all that is very unique. Seeing that all get put together, it was nice. I helped put it away and get to see kind of like the big fancy boxes that all these huge computers and keyboards are in. But it was really nice seeing that firsthand, and then it was a great discussion too. I enjoyed listening in.
We were happy to have your help for it. Charlotte, we've had your help this summer as well. Tell us what you've been working on as one of the news interns.
IdeaStream has definitely given me a lot of opportunities to work hands-on in terms of field reporting and man-on-the-street interviews. I know I've gotten to go all over Cleveland, really, and talk to a lot of different people in the field, which is a really great opportunity. I actually got to speak at a Cleveland cooling center that was set up when the weather was really hot in the city. I know we have a clip of that. I'm Charlotte Johns with IdeaStream Public Media, and we're here at one of Cleveland's cooling centers.
It's just so nice that you can come here and it's air conditioned. You don't have to sit in the house under a fan. You can get out, socialize, go get you some ice cream, or take the kids down. They have programs for kids.
Oh yes, we've been extremely busy. As of now, you see we have a lot of people in here right now. Everybody's in here cooling down. We got a lot of activities going on right now.
It just builds community. Community is something we need, especially in Cleveland and surrounding areas.
Charlotte, had you had experience interacting with the community in that way in your reporting before you came here to IdeaStream?
Not so much. I interned with a newspaper last summer, and so I had done things like trustees meetings where you're going to, government type meetings and just sitting in and taking notes and writing on that. But I didn't have experience necessarily talking to people in the community. And I think it's very valuable to get to talk to people and hear stories from people who are actually living in your community, and that isn't something I had done prior, so I was very grateful for that.
Get the perspective from the people who are actually impacted in the place where you are doing the reporting.
Yes, exactly.
Now, you're the president of the speech and debate team at Ball State. How has that skill come in handy during your internship?
I will sing the praises of that activity every day of my life. I have been in speech and debate for about 10 years now, and so it has been my life. It's been everything to me. And I really think that the skills that speech and debate gives to young people are really applicable to a lot of different careers, but I think especially journalism, because the main thing I've been doing in collegiate speech and debate is you're building a storyline or a thesis and finding the most productive, most effective way to deliver that to the audience. And that skill, more than anything, has helped me out in journalism because it's the same story where you have this thing and you want to get it to the audience in the most beneficial way possible. And so I've been doing that all summer at IdeaStream.
Lucas, let's hear about your experience now. This is your second time interning at IdeaStream Public Media. The first was in 2025, also with the Arts and Culture team, which you are with now. How did it feel returning a second time? Any different this year?
Well, I definitely got to do a lot more things. So both times I've been working on the to-do list, which has always been really fun because we're trying to represent our entire coverage area. So it's been a really great way to learn about my home state and everything that's going on. But I've gotten actually to go on site to do a few interviews and sort of arts features. I got to go down to Kane Park and talk to 2 Cleveland Institute of Art students who are putting on their debut solo exhibitions. I got to see a new exhibit from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame about women in metal. So it's just been really cool to kind of really get into the dirt of it all and talk to people face to face and kind of figure out what they're all about.
Explain to us, what is the to-do list for people who might not be familiar?
Yeah, so every week the Arts and Culture team puts out a list of 5 events. They're usually arts and culture related or sometimes, nature, exploration, wilderness kind of thing. And we try to get 2 events in Cuyahoga County and 3 events from somewhere else in our 22 counties of coverage. And it comes out on the website every week. Check it out. Love to read, love to have your readership, and then also in our newsletter.
Okay, great. Now, tell me a bit more specifically. I know we have an example of it we'll see here in just a moment of something that you got to work on here this time around.
Yeah, so I got to kind of follow and shadow my supervisor, Dave DeOrio, to an applause taping. So we went to a car show in Medina, and we talked to some of the car owners. We took footage of these great antique cars, and I got to film some things.
Let's see that right now.
Yeah.
Okay, I've asked several people about their cars, but there's nobody here to ask me about my car. So I've arranged here for my friend Lucas to interview me. I wrote some questions for you that you can ask me, so go ahead.
Why are Volkswagen owners always so cool?
I don't know, man. It's the way we roll, literally.
What's the best thing about applause besides the host?
I feel like I can't answer that because it's probably everything. It's the host and then everything else.
So that was a clip of you with the host of Applause, Kabir Bhatia. Yes. What was that like jumping on screen for that?
Oh my gosh. So I don't think I've ever been on camera like that before. So it was a little nerve-wracking, but we were basically filming like an outtake for the outro. So it was pretty lighthearted.
Jillian, you were asked to stay on with the marketing team through a co-op with CSU during the fall. Tell us about what you're looking forward to as you continue to work here.
Yeah, of course. I'm very excited, first off, because everyone always talks about, their first internship might not be exactly what they wanted, not exactly what they were thinking in mind. This has been perfect. This entire experience, I've been so grateful the entire time. I've learned so much through my team. I have a great team upstairs. I'm just very excited and looking forward to doing more work, especially as we get into more busier seasons.
Is there anything that you've started working on this summer that you will get to spend more time on in the fall, or do you think it'll be completely new projects?
I think it'll be, a mixture. I feel like certain things will come back just for reworking, but I feel it'll be a lot more new projects as well.
Okay. Alex, you're also staying on for this fall semester as a production intern. How has your time here at IdeaStream impacted, if at all, your future career aspirations?
I think it's really opened windows for me to participate more in like this, like I said, television broadcast. When starting film school, I really didn't expect to go into anything other than film. But seeing this firsthand, I realized that I think that I could find my way on the TV too, on this behind-the-scenes broadcast production territory.
Speaking of some of the things you've done here, you took on a big role in the summer intern project as the director. So tell us a little bit about that and what it was like coordinating with your peers.
It was really nice. It was a great video. I think we came up with a good narrative to push our guide to get into the building. We had a bunch of meetings together, and I think they all went very good. We had a lot of great ideas and great inputs. I mean, every Tuesday's always been a highlight, getting to work on this. But then when it came to shooting, I think we all teamed together and made something really great.
Sure, which will be a guide for if you are ever coming to the Idea Center. I had the opportunity to work with the group on that, and it was a lot of fun, and we saw a lot of hard work and effort went into it, so I'm looking forward to seeing the completion of that. Now, Charlotte, did this internship help you decide what direction you might want to take your career in, or did you already have a pretty strong idea about that coming here?
I would say I definitely knew aspects of things I wanted going into my career. I always knew I wanted to do something that was servicing a community and helping people. I always knew I wanted to do something in public communications or public speaking. And I would say IdeaStream was definitely the opportunity that classrooms talk about, where you can't just learn everything from sitting in a classroom and listening to your professors. I'm extremely grateful for my professors at Ball State University, but you can't 100% know exactly what you want to do until you're in the room doing it. And I did not have broadcast experience necessarily. I am only going to be a junior at Ball State this coming year, and getting to do an internship at IdeaStream in public speaking and broadcast has been extremely helpful when I'm trying to figure out exactly what I want to hone in on and specialize when I'm on university, because this has been an experience as opposed to just classroom learning.
Well, it's certainly good to know that you're getting that hands-on experience that's going to help you kind of tailor where you want to spend the rest of your college education. We appreciate hearing that. Now, Lucas, you're going to be pursuing law school in the fall. Congratulations for that. Do you think having this intern experience will help you in any way in your next endeavor?
I think it absolutely will. I mean, I think I was interested in a lot of things in undergrad, but what I always really loved was like storytelling, like problem solving through storytelling, and like taking these really complex problems, whether it was like literature, computer science, and just like breaking them down and figuring out, what's the best way I can put this back out. So whether that was like an argument or an essay, or another story or a computer program. And I think like that's what I've gotten to do every day here, whether it's writing a feature or, working on these productions, like having to do all this research and then boiling it down to what is the best way I can say this for an audience. What's the most helpful way? What's the most entertaining way I can like retell this story? So it's just been an amazing experience, and I'm so glad that it's the last thing that I got to do before I go off.
It's good that you're enjoying the research.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of reading in law school. I can
Yes.
speak from personal experience in that regard. Now, you've been here at IdeaStream twice as an intern. So any advice that you would give to someone who is hoping to be an intern here in the future?
I would say if you're kind of coming in, the biggest thing is just ask questions. Ask, like, no matter how minor you think it is, it could be important. It could, totally change your perspective on something. And I'm just so glad that I've gotten to work with mentors and supervisors that are constantly patient and like open to answering my questions.
And now I'll ask the rest of your peers here if you have any advice for other interns, future interns here at IdeaStream Public Media. Alex?
Show up on time every day.
Good
and,
one.
Keep a good head on your shoulders, It's just how you get through life.
Sure. Okay, Charlotte, how about for you?
I would say when I got the job at PBS, which is an exciting phone call to get, I thought about growing up with PBS Kids and all of those characters. I watched every show. And as a PBS kid myself, I grew up with Curious George. And what I've been saying all summer is this is my Curious George girl summer. Like, I'm staying curious about something. I think it's so important being in a space like this that I've never navigated before to keep asking questions, like Lucas said, and keep looking deeper into everything and wonder, what is this and why does it work this way? So I think that curiosity, holding on to that, really brought me through my internship.
Thank you for that, Charlotte. Jillian, what about for you? Advice for future interns?
I would definitely say take risks. If it's something that you feel is outside of your comfort zone, jump into it. It's going to benefit you in the end no matter what you're doing. It might not be exactly what you were thinking or exactly what you're leaning towards, but in some way, shape, or form, it'll have an impact on your future. So just take that risk, jump in, change your style, change, your outlook on things, just take that jump.
Well, it's not quite goodbye yet, but it is coming very soon. For those of you who will not be staying with us in the fall, I want to thank you all for being with us today. Alex Braun, content production intern and rising senior at Cleveland State University, staying with us in the fall. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks for having me.
Charlotte Johns, news intern and rising junior at Ball State University in Indiana. Thank you, Charlotte.
My pleasure.
Jillian Osridkar, marketing intern and rising senior at Cleveland State University, also lucky to be staying with us in the fall. We are the lucky ones. Jillian, thank you.
Thank you.
And Lucas Yang, arts and culture intern, recent graduate from Case Western University, on your way to a Cornell Law School. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much.
That was Stephanie Haney and some of our 2026 summer interns. We'll hear from the other half of the group next week. And we actually got a call during that segment, so we're going to take a caller now.
Hi, this is Stephanie in Lakewood, and I just want to say how much I enjoyed listening to the first segment today about stress and the body and the mind. And I wanted to say, Anna Huntsman, you are incredible at what you do. This is actually Stephanie Haney, your coworker. I wanted to let you know, and I didn't want to let this moment pass without letting our audience know how treasured and cherished you've been at IdeaStream Public Media. Quick note, I want to make sure everyone knows when we got the news that Anna was moving on to a new opportunity, the emails poured in about not only what a great person, but a great colleague and an innovator she is. So Anna, I just want to make sure that you and our audience knows how much you've been appreciated and how excited we are for you as you get ready to go on your next adventure. Just wanted to call in and say that for you today.
Thank you so much, Stephanie in Lakewood. That is Stephanie Haney, host of Sound of Ideas. Thank you so much for that call and for your kind words. Yes, as Stephanie just said, today is my last day at IdeaStream Public Media. So before we end the show, I wanted to take a few minutes here to reflect. My journey in public media started when I was a kid in Canton watching PBS Kids on WVIZ. I grew up hearing the IdeaStream bongos every time my favorite shows were starting, and I later caught the public radio bug as an undergraduate student at Kent State in a class taught by Amanda Rabinowitz, who you may have heard of. And then when I graduated from Kent State in 2019, IdeaStream was hiring for an associate producer position, and it felt like my dreams were coming true right before my eyes. When I got the job that October, I felt like the luckiest person in the world to get to work for the public media station I'd known my whole life in the region that meant so much to me for my first job out of college. In fact, as an associate producer, I got to be a call screener for this show, which was really fun and a great challenge for someone new to the field. I learned so much from watching Mike McIntyre and Rick Jackson take calls and ask tough questions. Now, nearly 7 years later, I still feel like the luckiest person ever to have worked with such creative, collaborative colleagues covering topics from the COVID-19 pandemic to Akron police reform to coming full circle and occasionally serving as a guest host for Sound of Ideas and the Reporters Roundtable. It is truly bittersweet to leave IdeaStream, and I'm so grateful for my experience, but I'm excited to be returning home to Kent State. Starting in mid-August, I'll be a content creator in the Division of Communications and Marketing. There's so many fabulous stories to tell at this university, and I cannot wait for this new challenge. In fact, you can find my future stories on Kent State's social media platforms and website, Kent State Today. As I close, I'd lastly like to say a huge thank you to the listeners and viewers. Thank you for supporting this public media station and allowing reporters like me to tell Northeast Ohio's stories. While I'll miss working here, I can't wait to watch all the great work from afar. And of course, I'll always be a PBS kid. I had to make one last pun. I'm known for my puns here at IdeaStream, so I had to make that last one. If you missed any part of today's show, you can hear a rebroadcast tonight at 9 on 89.7 WKSU. You can also find every episode of The Sound of Ideas wherever you get your podcasts and on the IdeaStream Public Media YouTube page. To get the last word on today's topics, you can send an email to soi@ideastream.org. You can find us on Instagram. We're at The Sound of Ideas. Tomorrow on The Sound of Ideas, we'll talk about youth sports culture in Northeast Ohio, how team activities benefit kids, and the greater economic impact. I'm Anna Huntsman. Stephanie Haney is back in the host chair tomorrow. Thanks so much for listening, and stay safe.
Support for WKSU is provided by Severance Music